Elizabeth, age 3. Elizabeth Elikia 3. Chapter 22. Location, Temple of Light. Time, 3 years after abduction. The room was filled with brilliant light that seemed to radiate in infinite directions. It was a round room with 7 pillars that stood 21 feet tall. Diamond-like glass made light from the ceiling refract onto every inch of the grand hall. Not a shadow could be found. The marble floors reflected the light up toward its origin, and the rays of light danced in the center of the room, where a small child knelt, meditating. Her white silk tunic was trimmed in gold. Her long dark hair was pulled tight into a ponytail. The color of her hair stood in sharp contrast to the golden ribbon that held her braided tail in place. Her eyes were closed, her breath was steady, and her hands were steepled in front of her. Soon, a man joined her in the Hall of Light, one of the many rooms in the Temple of Light. He stood and motioned for her to rise to her feet. With a single fluid motion, she jumped to her feet as if she were as light as a feather, her eyes still closed. She bowed her head gracefully as a gesture of respect, and as she opened her eyes, she spoke. "Good morning," she said in Chinese. Her voice was soft, but it carried throughout the great hall as if it swept through every inch and circled each of the 7 pillars. The man replied with a smile and a nod of his head.
"Good morning, Elizabeth,"
he answered in English.
"Your pronunciation this morning is much better. I am very pleased."
After allowing for a slight smile from the young girl, he added,
"Shall we begin?"
Elizabeth and the man turned and faced the same direction. They both assumed a defensive position. The routine had been the same for a week now. Elizabeth matched the moves of her instructor. They each moved their left arm forward and then back, followed by their right arm forward and back, defending themselves against unseen warriors. They were in perfect sync. She learned fast, as if she had been born to move this way. Every now and then, her instructor corrected one of her moves. After a few days, she had the lesson mastered and was ready for the next lesson. Her days were long and full. Each morning, she woke up early and meditated in the Hall of Light. Later, she was joined by her instructor. He was always on time, precisely on time as he would put it. They would practice for hours, working on various techniques in complex disciplines. After her morning lesson, she ate with her mentor. Her mentor would often test her knowledge during their meals together. This included knowledge of things such as languages, mathematics, and other skills. They often spoke the entire meal in a language that Elizabeth was learning. To an outsider, this may have seemed quite advanced for a 3-year-old, but Elizabeth had been doing this for as long as she could remember. It was second nature to her. After this meal, Elizabeth went to do combat and weapons training with special trainers from around the world. Chinese, Japanese, Thai, American, and more. There were 7 of these specialized trainers in all, and each was the best in the world at his or her art. When Elizabeth had mastered a subject or technique, the assigned trainer would be replaced with another. Later in her day, Elizabeth worked on her academic skills with at least 2 teachers per day. Reading and writing in different languages were the main focus. Still, she was also being groomed for advanced topics like physics and applied mathematics. When a new teacher was assigned, they were often astonished to be teaching such a young person. Still, they were then quickly humbled by her learning ability. Most of Elizabeth's reading was now concentrated in the Bible or books that were in some way related to scripture. In the evenings, she studied scriptures with her mentor and then meditated before bed. Her mentor always checked on her at bedtime and watched as she said her prayers. She was well cared for and watched over 24 hours a day. Chapter 23. Location: Jacksonville, Florida. Time: 3 years after abduction.
Nana, why don't we play soccer like normal kids?
Asked Rebecca.
Normal kids don't play soccer. They play football or basketball.
Matthew interjected before Nana could answer.
See, we're so not normal that we don't even know what normal is. You just want to be near Jimmy Stansfield.
Jacob added.
And for the record, we like martial arts.
I wasn't talking to you two, I was talking to Nana.
Rebecca said, getting angry. She knew the boys were correct, but didn't want them to know that they were right.
And I don't want to be near Jimmy, what's his name?
Nana finally found a break in the argument and stepped in.
Rebecca, it is your father's wish that you study martial arts. He has arranged for the best instructors for you and your brothers, and that is all you need to know.
Nana tried to close the argument decisively, but that wouldn't work with Rebecca.
You'd think we were preparing for a battle or something.
Rebecca replied, fulfilling her need to have the last word.
Maybe you should talk to your father about it when we arrive at the dojo, Rebecca. Perhaps he can explain it better than I can.
Nana replied.
Suddenly, kicking and punching doesn't sound so bad.
Rebecca conceded.
I just wish Dad would let us use what we learn. What good is it to know all of these cool ways to beat someone up if we can't let anyone know that we could beat them up? Yeah.
Matthew chimed in.
Like that bully, Eric Smellman.
His name was actually Spellman, but the boys always referred to him this way for obvious reasons.
Boys,
Nana said.
God did not put us here to beat up one another. We are to live together in peace. I won't have any more of this kind of talk. Are we clear?
The boys were silent.
Are we?
Nana added forcefully while looking in the rearview mirror.
Yes, ma'am.
Both of the boys answered.
Sorry, Nana.
Jacob added. A short time later, they arrived at the Seven Dragons of Light dojo. The dojo master, Master Haru, and his sons had migrated here from Asia over 30 years before. He and his 7 brothers were known as the greatest fighters in all of Asia. Now, Master Haru's 7 sons led most of the instruction. Jonathan had met one of Master Haru's brothers in a small village outside of Tokyo several years ago while tracking down a lead related to the syndicate. Haru's brother had a granddaughter who had been abducted by the syndicate. Jonathan saved her life, but almost lost his own to a highly trained syndicate operative. Since that time, Jonathan had been very close with the family of the 7 dragons. They had pledged to teach Jonathan their form of martial arts so that he would be better prepared for fighting the syndicate. The 7 dragon family also vowed that if ever needed, they would be there for Jonathan and his family. Jonathan had been training with the 7 dragons for some time now. As soon as the children were old enough, he had started their training as well. The 7 dragons were the dragon of light, the dragon of earth, the dragon of water, the dragon of air, the dragon of flight, the dragon of invisibility, and the dragon of peace. The legend states that each of the original 7 dragons, who had long since passed, had 7 sons, and they were taught the skills of each of the dragons. Each son would become a master of one of the 7 skills. It also states that the 7 dragon family was protected by Shangdi. Using the Christian interpretation of the word, this meant the God above all emperors, or the Lord Most High, who possessed extraordinarily long life. Their skills, which they referred to as powers, were passed to the 7 sons of each of the 7 masters. Now, these skills were being taught to Jonathan and his children so that they would be prepared. He was sure the syndicate was after him, and he was not going to end his search for his daughter or back down from his fight with the organization. His family would always be at risk, so he needed his children to be able to take care of themselves.
Wow.
The children whispered quietly. As they entered the dojo, they stopped in awe of what they were witnessing. Their father had jumped into the air and was gracefully flying toward his opponent, Daniel Tan, otherwise known as the Dragon of Air. Daniel had seen the attack coming and flown away from Jonathan's attack. His flowing yellow and gold silk robe fluttered in the wind as he flew backward through the air. He grasped his long queue with his left hand so that it would not become a tempting target. As the two landed gracefully, Daniel removed his blindfold and spoke.
That was good, John. My brother has taught you the art of flight well, but you are still fighting the air. It is not your opponent. I am. You must agree with the air and allow it to assist you on your journey through it. How do you think I anticipated your attack?
I'm gonna say the air told you.
Jonathan replied. He didn't mean to seem sarcastic, but it had been a long practice, and he was pretty winded.
That is correct, John. The air is always around you. If you allow it, it will speak to you. It will warn you and assist you.
Daniel noticed the children watching from the door and then turned his attention back to Jonathan.
You must open your mind to what I am telling you. If you do, you will learn to work with the air, and it will agree to work with you.
I'll work on it, Master Tan.
The exhausted student replied.
Hello, children.
Daniel turned his attention to Jonathan's children.
Are you ready for your lessons?
Yes, we are, Daniel.
The children ran over to greet Daniel and give their dad a group hug. Daniel cleared his throat.
Sorry.
They said in unison, adding,
Master Tan.
As the children bowed in respect, Daniel's smile reflected the children's. The American 7 Dragons were not as strict about protocol as their Asian counterparts. Still, Daniel thought it wise to remind the children every once in a while that the protocol existed. Besides, he knew that Jonathan preferred they respect the ways of the 7 Dragons. Daniel noticed Nana and smiled.
And how are you today, Nana? Are you sure you won't join us tonight in a few lessons?
Nana smiled and gave her usual answer.
No, thank you. I will just watch from over here.
As you wish, Nursen.
Daniel politely replied, using Nana's real name as a sign of respect. He bowed slightly. Jonathan hugged the children. His outfit resembled that of a white ninja, although Jonathan chose not to wear the mask. The children wore similar outfits for their training.
Daddy, you were awesome,
Rebecca said, as Jonathan released her from his arms.
Thanks, sweetie. Master Tan is a good instructor.
Jonathan nodded to Daniel and then looked back at the children.
I'm sure all of you will be just as good as he is someday.
The children were excited to hear such a thing, and their eyes could not hold their excitement back. Jonathan patted each of them on the head as they turned to get ready for their lessons. To learn the art of the 7 Dragons, someone must complete the training in order. First, you learn the Dragon of Light, which is designed to enlighten you and open your mind to things that you would typically think are not possible. It was the first step to conditioning your mind to accept that you are more than you have been taught that you are. The Dragon of Earth and the Dragon of Water were next. These arts teach you to respect the earth and its power. They teach that your surroundings and your sure-footedness are part of your relationship with the earth and its bodies of water. The Dragon of Flight was next. This was a very physical stage. You must learn that you are capable of more than you'd ever imagined. You must also learn that your mind and body can move beyond the restrictions of the laws of physics. It is more about freeing your mind than about actual flight. The Dragon of Air, Jonathan's current stage, taught a student how to use the same air that fills his or her lungs as a tool or as a weapon. It could even be used as a defense system, as Jonathan had found out today. It was a very difficult stage. The Dragon of Invisibility applied the ninja arts and taught you how to blend into the environment by teaching you how to avoid your opponent's sight. This was also very difficult. There were many times in Jonathan's career that he wished he had been at this level. And finally, there is the Dragon of Peace. Only those who reach this level are permitted to know what can be learned in it. The children were very eager to learn. They practiced very hard and put everything they had into the lessons. The personalized instruction made them progress faster than regular students. The twins had progressed to the level of the Dragon of Water, and Rebecca was learning the Dragon of Earth. Although they had a long way to go, the 7 dragons were impressed by the children's many talents. They believed that the children were blessed by God and that angels were guiding them along a path. The 7 sons of Master Haru were also Christians. Chapter 24. Location: FBI Headquarters, Jacksonville, Florida. Time: 3 years after abduction.
Welcome back, Rick.
Jonathan was excited to see his partner, who had been on assignment for nearly a year in Europe.
How was your assignment?
The trial of 3 known syndicate associates had led to Rick's reassignment to Great Britain, France, and then Italy, as the lead FBI liaison to the respective governments. Jonathan and Rick's long-time investigation of the syndicate had made each of them respected authorities on the matter. Rick's assignment had been fruitful and led to the conviction of 2 of the known syndicate associates. However, the third had committed ritual suicide while being held in the custody of French authorities. Rick's warnings about this possibility fell on deaf ears.
Long? And did I mention long?
Rick replied, grinning.
I know what you mean, and I'm glad you're back.
Me too. I can't wait to sleep in my bed and not some hotel.
Rick looked around at Jonathan's office as he talked.
Any breakthrough on Elizabeth?
No.
Jonathan answered.
And you know I would have called you if there had been.
Jonathan's office walls were covered with all the clues that he had uncovered so far. But there hadn't been anything new in almost a year. The pictures reminded Jonathan that there was still work to be done. He wasn't giving up as long as God still filled his lungs with air to breathe. He placed his trust in God even though things did not appear to be positive. He had made up his mind to look at all the good things God had blessed him with. He knew God would deliver. And when God did choose to deliver, Jonathan vowed that he would be ready. He understood that God works in ways that he may not always understand. He figured God wanted him to be ready for the return of his daughter. And until he was ready, God would protect Elizabeth. Jonathan dismissed any other thoughts that the enemy put into his head. He knew his daughter was alive. There was no other option. Chapter 25. Location: Jacksonville, Florida. Time: 3 years after abduction. 5 feet off the ground. Jacob reviewed his options. If he had only been flush when he hit the ramp that Matthew hurriedly threw into place for him, he might have had more options. But as it stood, His choices were to either hit the side of the truck or land in the street in front of the car, the one without a driver that was gaining speed and drifting down the hill. Ordinarily, this would not have been a tough decision, but today it was a little more pressing. Two girls were near the intersection, unaware that they were directly in the path of the runaway car. A few minutes before, Eric Spellman was playing in his father's new Pontiac Firebird convertible. He liked to get behind the wheel and pretend to drive, and this car was better than his dad's last car. It was a 5-gear manual transmission. Eric fantasized that it was his car and that he was the greatest driver in the world. He liked switching gears, even though his legs were barely long enough to reach the clutch. His father had shown him everything about the car a few days ago when he brought it home from the dealership.
Now, Eric, you have to make sure that the emergency brake is off before you take it out on the road.
His dad had said as a joke.
That is, once you are old enough to drive, son.
His dad smiled and patted him on the head.
Eric!
His mom now yelled from the garage,
Dinner! And I told you not to play in your father's new car.
Okay, Mom.
Eric replied as he jumped out of the car and hurried into the house. It was spaghetti night, and Eric loved his mom's spaghetti even more than he loved his dad's new car. Matthew and Jacob were riding their bikes to get Rebecca, who was at a friend's birthday party around the corner from their house. On the way, they passed Jenny Martin and her little sister playing hopscotch in the middle of the street. The girls were listening to a small boombox, and the sound was a little distorted because they had it turned up so loud. At the top of the cul-de-sac, they heard Mrs. Spellman call Eric in for dinner.
Good.
Jacob thought.
At least we don't have to cross paths with Spellman.
He corrected himself as if Nana were there with him. As the boys pedaled past an old work truck, Matthew noticed a board lying on the ground next to the truck with nails sticking out of it. He decided to flip the board over so that none of the neighborhood kids would accidentally step on it and get hurt.
I'll catch up,
he said, waving Jacob on.
Okay,
Jacob replied. Then something caught his eye. The black car at the end of the cul-de-sac was moving slowly backward.
Isn't that the car that Spellman just got out of?
He wondered. He kept riding forward as the car kept creeping slowly backward. Matthew yelled to Jacob,
Where are you going? You passed the house.
By that time, Jacob was close enough to tell that there was no driver in the new convertible. He slammed on his front brake, whipped the back end of his bike completely around, and started heading toward Matthew as fast as he could.
Look out! Runaway car! Jenny, look out!
Jacob yelled as loudly as he could.
Look out!
He repeated. Matthew looked down the street to the corner. Jenny and her sister couldn't hear Jacob. Matthew started yelling,
Jenny, look out!
While Jacob pedaled as fast as he could, the car was gaining speed on a steady course.
I've got to stop that car,
he thought. It was too late, and too dangerous to get next to it. He didn't want to get run over. But as he looked down the street, he noticed that Matthew had the answer. He had propped the long plank against the open tailgate of the old truck. If Jacob could get airborne, he might be able to land in the car. But the car was pulling ahead. Matthew watched his brother give it everything he had.
You can do it,
he thought.
But just in case.
He added quietly as he turned to look at the two girls. He thought he'd better start yelling again. By this time, their yelling had attracted the interest of a few neighbors who came outside of their garages or looked out their windows to see what was going on. The car, which had overtaken Jacob, suddenly found itself scraping along the side of one of the neighbors' parked cars. It was just enough to scratch both cars, but not enough to stop the brand new convertible. but it was all that Jacob needed. The convertible slowed down just enough to allow Jacob to overtake the car, hit the ramp, and launch himself and his bike about 5 feet into the air. Matthew's eyes were wide open, and a smile covered his face.
Wow.
He said as he watched his brother, in slow motion, rise higher and higher into the air. He'd surely clear the back of the truck, but would he clear the roof in time to make it to the car? From the upstairs window of the Addisons' 2-story house, Rebecca's heart skipped a beat as she watched the scene unfold in the street. Her brother was chasing an out-of-control car. At first she thought,
What did those boys do now?
But then she figured it out. They were trying to save the 2 girls who were playing in the street at the corner. As her brother hit the ramp and launched into the air, she couldn't breathe or say a word, something that was very unusual for Rebecca. But in her head, she prayed 4 words.
Lord, please protect him.
I sure am glad that you could come over for dinner tonight, Rick. I know the kids will love seeing their favorite uncle.
Jonathan came to a stop, put on his turn signal, and turned into his neighborhood.
Nana's been planning your welcome home party for 2 weeks. She won't even tell me what she's making. I guess she thinks you'd be able to get it out of me.
Jonathan paused, also thinking that Rick would try to get information out of him. But Rick seemed preoccupied.
You okay?
Look at that car. It's about to hit.
A black convertible sideswiped a parked car, throwing sparks into the air. Jonathan and Rick both looked up in amazement and horror. They noticed that 2 girls were playing in the middle of the street with their backs to the approaching car. Jonathan honked the horn several times, but the distance and the girls' music kept them from responding. What Jonathan saw next almost sent him into shock. A small boy on a bike came over a parked truck.
My God.
Both men said as they watched the world come to a stop. Chapter 26. Location: Temple of Light. Time: midnight.
No.
Elizabeth cried out as she sat up. In less than a minute, her mentor entered the room.
Are you okay?
He asked.
I had a dream.
She replied.
There was a boy on a bike. He was trying to save 2 girls from being hurt. I think there were 2 boys.
She added.
Tell me more.
He said in a gentle voice as he sat on the edge of her bed.
Tell me more of this boy.
The boy was brave. He was trying to stop a car. The car was out of control and then he flew.
Flew?
Her mentor smiled.
Yes, sir. Not with wings or anything, but he flew. I think he was trying to catch the car, but it was going too fast. I tried to tell him to watch out for the car, but he just flew up and over. Then I woke up.
Well, I'm sure that this young man will be fine.
He smiled at Elizabeth.
You just try to get some sleep. We have a lot to do tomorrow.
May I pray for him?
She asked.
Of course, Elizabeth, of course.
He replied. Elizabeth took his hand and closed her eyes.
Dear Heavenly Father, protect Jacob as he seeks to do a right and good-hearted act. Send your angels to lift him up in their hands so that he does not even scrape his foot. In the mighty name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Her mentor added. Although he didn't ask, he silently wondered.
Jacob?
Chapter 27. Location: Jacksonville, Florida. Time: 3 years after abduction. Silently and confidently, the convertible continued its journey down the hill. The bird emblazoned on its hood reflected the evening sun. The car's temporary dealings with a small import had dented and scratched the passenger side, breaking the Pontiac's mirror along with the other damage. The small import seemed to take most of the harm.
Think fast, Jacob, or you're roadkill.
Jacob's mind raced. He had cleared the truck's roof as he knew he could, but now what?
Ditch the bike,
he thought. But he liked his bike, and he didn't want it to meet its end. If he let go now, the bike would be demolished by the car. Not the answer. And there was the other problem. Distance. He was high enough, but not close enough. His angle was off, and he wouldn't be able to land in the car if he didn't come up with something. He could hear his brother yelling. He saw the girls at the end of the street, still unaware of any of this. He could imagine Rebecca lecturing him in a hospital room if he got hurt. So he had to do this without getting hurt. Then he heard the voice of Master Tan telling him to clear his mind. As he did, he gained sight. He made up his mind. First, get rid of the bike. The truck's roof was only a foot or two away. With a deft move, Jacob jumped off of the bike, kicking it and pushing it toward the roof of the truck.
Catch Matthew!
Jacob yelled. He estimated that it would land wheels first. He didn't want to damage the truck more than necessary. And he knew that Matthew would do what needed to be done. Problem 1 solved. Even though the car continued to pick up speed, Jacob knew that his timing was still slightly off. He needed to buy a half second or so. Even though he was currently studying the Dragon of Water, he understood that the Dragon of Air was meant to free his mind. He had seen his father train enough to know that it was possible to use the air as a tool. Jacob focused. He spread his arms and legs like a skydiver dropping from a high-flying plane. And then boom!
Jacob!
Jonathan yelled as he saw his son push away from his bike.
Breathe,
he thought. Jonathan had always taught the children to just breathe whenever the moment was tense. Breathe, take the time to think, and then pray.
Jacob,
yelled Rebecca.
Breathe,
she thought.
God's angels have him now. They will lift him up,
was the thought that followed.
Sweet!
Yelled Matthew, who was already on his way to intercept the bike and stop it from causing any unnecessary damage. In no time, Matthew leaped onto the hood of the truck as if he were climbing a stairway. Rick took it all in. He wanted to say,
Did you see that?
But he knew that now wasn't the time. Jacob was in the air for what seemed to be an eternity of seconds that were slowed so he could experience each one in its fullness. However long it may have actually been, it was now over. He was on the trunk of the out-of-control Firebird convertible.
Ow,
Jacob said. He hadn't expected it to hurt. In fact, he hadn't thought about the landing at all. Maybe if he had, he would have chosen to land on his feet. As it was, he was just thankful to be on the car and not behind it or under it. As he hit the car, he bounced and almost slid off the side. He grabbed onto the seatbelt from the back seat as his legs slid off the side of the car. The seatbelt helped him quickly gain control of his sideways journey. He pulled himself over and into the back seat. The car quickly cleared the old truck, and there were no other obstacles between the vehicle and the unsuspecting girls at the corner. Jonathan reached into his center console, grabbed a blue globe, and placed it onto his car's roof. He flipped a switch, and the siren started to howl. Jacob didn't hear the siren. He was too busy.
Now what?
He thought as he figured out the fastest way to bring the car to a stop. He quickly jumped into the front seat, but he knew he was nearly out of time. The car was closing on the girls. Jacob quickly grabbed the emergency brake and pulled up with all his might while turning the steering wheel as far as he could with one hand. Jenny Martin and her sister enjoyed two things in life. First, there was hopscotch. If they could have played hopscotch for the rest of their lives, they would. They loved it because their mom sometimes played it with them. They loved doing whatever their mom did. Second, they loved listening to music on their headsets or on their boombox. Sometimes they listened to both at the same time, like Jenny was doing today. And they liked their music to be loud.
10. I win.
Jenny said to her little sister, and then she turned around to face her. As she turned, Jenny's face changed from a giant victory smile to a frown of horror. A car was coming straight at her and her still unsuspecting sister. She didn't even have time to scream before her sister would be hit. As she dropped her portable stereo, the headphones came unplugged. For a moment, the air filled with the sound of Jenny's favorite song. But before the lyrics could make sense to her, the device hit the ground and disassembled. Her sister was still singing the lyrics of the song coming from the boombox. Jenny only heard the filtered, unreal sound of a siren filling the air. Jenny's little sister, Jessica, saw Jenny's face, but didn't know what was wrong. She could see the blue light flashing on a car coming up the hill toward them, but she didn't know why Jenny was so shaken up over it. They hadn't robbed a bank or anything.
It isn't illegal to draw squares on the road,
she thought.
Or is it?
Just the other day, Mr. Spellman had told them that they shouldn't write on the street. As Jenny closed her eyes to avoid seeing the tragedy in store for both of them, the Pontiac's taillights lit up, the car turned, and it slid to a stop. Even with her headphones on, Jessica could hear the squeal of the tires behind her as her heart leaped into her throat. She turned around, expecting the worst. But instead, her eyes met Jacob's. She let out a high-pitched yelp. She quickly realized that even though she had come very close to harm, she was okay. Then she and her sister yelled at Jacob. "What are you doing?" Jacob finally noticed the sound of the siren and realized that his father was nearby. His hands were white-knuckled as he continued to grip the steering wheel, but his eyes were fixed on the two sisters. He had done it. He had saved their lives. Within seconds, Matthew stood beside the car.
Dude, that was awesome!
He yelled.
Did you see how high you were?
He turned around in a circle to demonstrate.
Man, that rocked. Dad, Uncle Rick, did you see that?
Jonathan had brought his car to a stop and turned off the siren. Rick radioed the local Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, notified them of the incident, and then got out of the car. Jonathan's eyes stayed on Jacob. He could tell that his son was in shock. He had seen it in others 100 times. Jonathan nodded at Jacob and gave him the slightest smile. He then mouthed one word: "Breathe." Jacob recognized the nod as the "I'm proud of you" nod. He had seen it plenty of times. This was enough to relax Jacob. He released the steering wheel and took a deep breath. Seconds later, the scene was full of spectators, and everyone was asking questions like, "What happened? Did you see that?" And, "Mr. Spellman's gonna freak." Some were already telling the story of the kid who flew through the air.
"Great job, Jacob. You're a real hero,"
said an adult from the background. But Jacob could hardly make out the words. All he could think of was his father's arms around him.
Well done, Jacob. Well done.
Jonathan held his son in his arms. Seconds later, a voice that Jonathan and Jacob both recognized rose above all the others.
Jacob said, "How dare you scare me half to death? Do you know what you put me through?"
Jacob didn't have to turn around to know that Rebecca was standing behind him. But when he did, he was surprised. Tears were running down her face, and she wore a beautiful smile to complement them. She grabbed Jacob and her father and held them tight.
"Way to go, little brother,"
she added softly.
My car. My car! Help! Someone's stolen my car!
The crowd turned to see Mr. Spellman. He was followed by his wife and son as he ran down the street toward the crowd that blocked his view of his brand new, much damaged car.
What's everyone doing in the middle of the street?
He asked as he reached the crowd. Some laughed, and some just stared at him and shook their heads.
Smellman? You idiot!
Someone said.
What?
He asked. Chapter 28. Location, Jacksonville, Florida. Time, later that evening.
Nana, you make the best meatloaf. What's your secret?
Even for a world traveler such as Rick, there was no equal to Nana's meatloaf.
I will never tell.
Nana smiled as she started to clear the table.
You will just have to visit whenever you want some.
She turned and went into the kitchen.
If that's the case, I'll just move in. I can sleep in a room with the two heroes.
Rick smiled at the boys.
Did you hear that, Rebecca? Uncle Rick said we're heroes.
Matthew was still excited about the day's events.
Yes, I heard.
Rebecca mumbled.
Jacob, I have to know. How in the world did you stay in the air so long? It was like watching a skydiver freefall.
Rick had seen Jonathan do some fairly miraculous things during their many cases together, but Jacob was only 7 years old. Jacob thought for a minute and replied,
It was like there were hands, grabbing my hands, arms, and my legs. They held me up until the car was under me.
Rebecca stopped chewing. That was exactly what she had prayed for. That angels would hold him up. She smiled and continued eating quietly.
Wow,
Rick said.
And Matthew, I saw you do something I've only seen your father do.
What's that, Rick?
Jonathan asked.
Walk upstairs. That weren't there.
Rick said, smiling.
Matthew
knew he wasn't supposed to talk about their training with the 7 dragons. He looked at his father, whose hands were on his head. Rick's question had finally made it through to Jonathan. A lot of people had seen what had happened today. He was so caught up with the safety of his sons that he had forgotten about the crowd and all of the questions that would follow.
Uncle Rick knows about the 7 dragons, Matthew. Go ahead and answer him. But listen carefully, kids. We do not talk to anyone about the training you receive other than the people who are inside this house right now. Are we clear?
Yes, Daddy.
The 3 answered as one.
Okay, you guys, go clean up your plates and help Nana.
Jonathan said, motioning to all of them. The boys replied.
Go on.
Jonathan countered.
After that, get ready for bed and Uncle Rick will tuck you in before I take him home.
Cool, we want a story.
The boys replied.
Okay. You twisted my arm.
Rick added. Chapter 29. Location, Jacksonville, Florida. Time, later that night. As he drove Rick home, Jonathan tried to find the right words to thank him, but before he could, Rick spoke.
Sorry about the reality check earlier.
No, not at all. You were right, as usual. I can't have the world zeroing in on my children just because I'm preparing them for a war that I can't even see.
Jonathan replied.
Look, if you hadn't trained your children, there are parents in your neighborhood that would have lost theirs tonight. Don't worry, John. You're doing the right thing. Our jobs keep us in danger, and unfortunately, that puts our families in danger as well. They need to be able to protect themselves, and apparently, they needed to be able to protect others as well.
Rick was stern because he didn't want Jonathan doubting himself. He knew Jonathan's reasons, and he agreed with them.
Here, you may want to look at this before you destroy it.
What is it?
Jonathan asked.
Well, one of the neighbors had his video recorder handy and recorded the whole thing. He got everything.
How did you? Never mind, I don't want to know. Thanks.
It was Rick's self-appointed job to keep the acts of the children out of the media and under the radar. Without evidence, the neighbors wouldn't really believe what they saw. People were funny that way. But with proof, Jonathan's world and that of his children would be completely different.
Rick, you are an example of God's grace.
Jonathan smiled, and they left it at that.
Hey, can you stop here at the corner store? I need to pick up some milk. If I don't have my cereal in the morning, I'm grumpy at the meeting.
Rick confessed.
So you're saying we should keep some milk and Fruit Loops handy at the office?
Jonathan smiled.
Is that what they think? They think I'm grumpy, don't they?
Both men laughed, and Jonathan pulled in and stopped at the pump.
I guess I'll fill up while I wait,
Jonathan said.
Take your time.
Okay, back in a second. You want anything?
Rick asked as he walked away.
No thanks, I'm good,
Jonathan replied. There were 3 other cars parked at the convenience store. There was also a car running, parked on the side of the store near the street. Its lights were on, and the rear door was open, but Jonathan didn't think too much of it. As Rick approached the door, he noticed that no one in the store was moving. They were all standing still. Rick stopped and stepped to the side of the door. Then he moved and knelt down in front of the refillable kerosene tanks. It wasn't an ideal place to hide, but he had a better view of what was going on. Jonathan noticed Rick's actions, and he knew that this meant trouble. He opened his car door and grabbed his radio.
Patch me through to the JSO dispatcher.
After a few seconds, a voice replied,
Go ahead.
This is Special Agent Jonathan Sett, FBI. I have a possible robbery in progress at the corner of San Jose Boulevard and Sunbeam Road. Send backup. 1 car parked on the side of the building. Approach with caution. Oh, and keep it quiet, please.
Jonathan put the radio down and grabbed his gun out of the center console.
Roger, Agent Sett. There are 2 officers in your vicinity. Additional units are on the way. The scene is yours until otherwise notified,
the dispatcher said. Jonathan picked up the mic one last time and replied,
Roger that. Set out.
By the time Jonathan exited his car, Rick was behind one of the 3 cars parked in front of the store. Jonathan joined him there.
I make 6 people inside, 3 females, 3 males, but I don't see the guy that works here at night. I think he's behind the counter on the floor. But I don't know.
Rick angled for another look.
Backup is on the way, and I count at least 1 in the car parked on the side.
Jonathan added.
Car? What are you, an eagle or something?
Rick said.
Always survey the scene. Haven't I taught you anything?
Jonathan replied.
So, should we wait for backup?
Have you got a plan?
Rick asked.
Yeah, Palm Beach.
Jonathan smiled.
That is my favorite plan. You do know that's my favorite plan, right?
Rick replied.
All right, let's go,
Jonathan said. The 2 men stood up and walked toward the door. As they opened it, Jonathan and Rick started yelling at each other.
I am not going to do it,
Jonathan said forcefully.
I'm not paying a crazy man that much money for a second-rate boat.
Look, all I'm saying is that you made the offer, and you need to honor the offer. It's a contract, for goodness sake.
Rick yelled back. The 5'9" robber behind the counter was startled. He reached for his gun, but when he saw that the 2 men that had entered the store were arguing with each other and not paying any attention, he motioned to his partner to stay calm. The other people in the store remained still, following the robber's orders. The thief behind the counter had his foot on the night clerk, who was face down on the floor with his hands tied behind his back. Jonathan and Rick quickly split apart, giving all the more reason to have to yell. As they continued to argue, they made their way to the back of the store.
I made the offer after they showed me a picture of a boat that looked new, not one with rust, grime, and mold all over it.
Jonathan continued.
Look, all the information about the boat was right there in the brochure. Legally, you're going to have to pay this guy.
Rick said loudly.
Hey, you guys, this is a store. Can you keep it down?
The robber behind the counter had now assumed the role of the night clerk as he attempted to calm the two yelling men down before things got any more out of hand. Rick noticed the robber's partner and quickly moved to walk right past him. Jonathan continued to yell at Rick.
Listen, you call him tomorrow morning and cancel this deal. I want all my money back by tomorrow, close of business. Understand me?
Jonathan had reached the back of the store, opened the case, and grabbed a peach knee-high. He left the door open as a distraction and made his way to the counter. The thief was annoyed that Jonathan had utterly disregarded him.
I don't know if I can get your money back. You signed a contract. You paid the money and got the boat.
Rick was now in position and finally gave his code word. He said,
I'm a good lawyer, but I'm not that good.
The word lawyer sent chills down the spine of the robber at the back of the store. Now it was Jonathan's turn.
You listen closely to me. If I don't have my money back by end of day tomorrow, I will bring the full weight of the FBI down on this guy.
With those words, Rick and Jonathan both pulled their guns and held them on the unsuspecting robbers.
And by the way,
said Rick to the men,
you are under arrest for armed robbery.
The two robbers were stunned.
Hands up, fellas.
Jonathan looked into the nearest robber's eyes and could see what the man was about to do. The robber reached for his gun, which was sitting beside the register. But before he could grab it, Jonathan spoke to him in a calm voice.
It's not worth it, son. Better to live and be forgiven than to die robbing a convenience store.
The robber's eyes were still angry.
Are you saved, my friend? I just need to make sure you're safe before you reach for that gun, and I have no choice but to kill you where you stand. So tell me, are you saved?
Rick removed the gun from the young man he held at gunpoint and asked him to put his hands behind his back. He cuffed him and put his gun away. He knew Jonathan could handle the other young man. He had seen it before.
I don't know.
The young man answered Jonathan.
Then step away from that gun and let's talk about it. Your life doesn't need to end tonight. Not here. Not like this.
Jonathan's voice was sincere. He didn't want to end this young man's life, especially when there was a chance to introduce him to Christ. The young man stepped back and placed his hands in the air. As Jonathan and Rick brought their assailants outside, they found that the JSO had already detained the driver of the car that was parked on the side of the building. They turned the two men over to the JSO, gave a lengthy report, and decided to call it a night.
Hey, don't forget your milk,
Jonathan said to Rick as he approached the JSO car where Jonathan was standing.
Oh, snap. I can't believe I almost forgot my milk. You just saved everyone at the office. Each one of them owes you a great debt.
Rick smiled and turned in the other direction toward the store.
You want anything?
No, but thanks,
Jonathan replied, smiling.
And stop saying snap. My kids are rubbing off on you.
Jonathan went around to the driver's side of the police car that held the robber that had been behind the counter. He stuck his head in and asked,
You okay back there, young man?
The young man replied,
My name is Robert. People just call me Rob, and yeah, I'm okay other than the fact that I just messed my life up again.
Listen, you and I have some things to talk about, Robert,
Jonathan said. In the moments that followed, Jonathan introduced Robert to Jesus. By the time Rick returned from getting his milk and a few other items, Robert had confessed Jesus as his personal Lord and Savior, and he was in tears in the back of the police car.
Robert, I'll stop by to see you tomorrow. Life gets harder from here, but it also gets easier. You are not the same person you were a few moments ago. Tomorrow, I'll introduce you to another friend of mine at the county jail. They call him Father Rock. You'll like him.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan,
Robert replied. The following day, Jonathan did just that. He also arranged for Robert to get into special programs within the system. Jonathan had told Robert that God was not punishing him by sending him to jail. In fact, Robert's going to jail was his own doing. His choices had led him to this point. But God could take anyone in any circumstance and bless them if they just opened up to him. Jonathan recommended that Robert take this time to get to know God and to allow his life to change. As Jonathan left after speaking with Robert again, he recalled what was being read on the deputy's car stereo the previous night. And when he cometh home, he calleth together his friends and neighbours, saying unto them, Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep which was lost. I say unto you, that likewise joy shall be in heaven over one sinner that repenteth, more than over 99 just persons, which need no repentance. Luke 15 verses 6 through 7 KJV. Many of the officers played recordings of local ministers in their cars, and Jonathan thought highly of that. Elizabeth, age 5. Elizabeth Elikiah 5. Chapter 30. Location, Temple of Light. Time, 5 years after abduction.
Today, we will practice the art of protection.
Master Sunley approached his young students from behind once again. Each day, his students lined up facing the direction they thought he would enter the room. It was a game that he played with them. And today, just like every day before, he managed to sneak up on them. His voice always appeared before his body, which suddenly emerged from the light. Collectively, the class sighed, knowing that he had defeated them again. But they would not give up. Tomorrow, they thought, we will win. Once, they had decided to stand in a circle, each facing outward, but Master Lee materialized in the center of the circle, catching them all off guard again.
When you can catch me,
Master Lee often said as he laughed,
no one in the world will be able to sneak up on you.
The children loved and respected Master Lee, even though he frustrated them. At any given time, there were a handful of students in the Temple Elizabeth's age. Elizabeth wasn't sure where they came from. Most of the time, she was busy studying or training. Some of the children she only saw once or twice. Some, like her friend Han Young-sun, were constantly around. In fact, Han was the closest thing she had to a playmate. He was a few years older than she was, and she considered him a good friend. Although most of her day was spent training, which she enjoyed, she cherished the small amount of time she was able to spend watching TV or racing through the temple with Han.
You must be able to protect a person who is in danger.
Master Lee continued.
Today, you will protect your injured partner from 4 attackers. The attackers must not be allowed to touch the injured person. You must either defeat your opponents or get your victim to the safe zone.
Master Lee explained.
This is a timed exercise. You will have 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Asked Han. And then he wished that he hadn't.
I see we have our first volunteer,
the master said with a smile.
Elizabeth, you will play the part of the injured partner. Han, you will protect her.
Yes, Master Lee.
Yes, Master Lee.
They both replied. Master Lee often assigned Elizabeth a role that would keep her out of direct combat with the other children. This particular training session wasn't for her as much as it was for the others. She was allowed to participate, but mainly for the companionship of others her age. Her regular training classes were much more advanced, just as she was much more advanced than the others in this class. She understood why he would give her the non-combative roles, and she understood not to give him away when she heard him entering the room to surprise the students.
Begin!
Master Lee gave the command, and 4 large men appeared from the light. Han took a defensive position between Elizabeth and the 4 attackers.
Think,
he said as he attempted to calm himself and protect his friend. The first attacker quickly approached Han, attempting to overtake him with a brute force attack. Han quickly stepped to the side, grabbed the man's arm, and changed his trajectory before hurling his attacker across the room. But he knew the others would not be so easy. He glanced back at Elizabeth, who gave him a thumbs up and a smile. Elizabeth was enjoying herself. She liked to see and study the techniques others used. Sometimes she incorporated these things into her own style. She had resolved long ago that she could learn from anyone, no matter their skill level.
Life is a lesson,
Muna often told her. The second attacker took a step forward and stopped. He looked at the third attacker and nodded. Han knew this meant that one would attempt to distract him while the other went for Elizabeth.
But which one would play which role?
He asked himself as the attackers started to separate. Circling around Han and Elizabeth, the attackers attempted to divide Han's attention and make him commit to choosing between them. Instead, Han drew closer to Elizabeth, forcing the attackers to come to him. The attackers did just that. To his left, one attacker started toward Han with tremendous speed while the other waited to see Han commit. And he did. Han took 2 steps and jumped into a flying kick, landing on his opponent's chest. Then he kicked off with everything he had. His opponent was sent flying in the opposite direction. Han deftly maneuvered into a backflip, and then a series of handsprings, landing in front of the third attacker, who was moving quickly toward Elizabeth. Han dropped to the ground and kicked the attacker's foot as it landed on the floor, sending the attacker flying head over heels.
That's going to hurt in the morning,
Elizabeth thought as the attacker landed on his back in front of her.
Hi,
Elizabeth said with a smile and a polite wave.
Elizabeth.
Master Li said, implying that Elizabeth's role as the injured party did not have a speaking part.
Sorry,
she mouthed. Han placed himself between the final attacker and Elizabeth. With his left foot behind him, he planted his right foot in front and bent his knees as if he were flexing a muscle. He then pushed his right hand forward, holding 2 fingers up as he fully extended his arm toward the attacker. His left hand remained concealed at his side.
1 minute remaining,
Master Li announced. The 5-minute time frame meant that you had 5 minutes to save your partner before reinforcements arrived for your enemy's team. Since Han could do nothing to make his opponent come to him, he decided to attack. He ran as fast as he could and leaped into the air as he gave a loud war cry. As his foot was about to connect with his opponent's chest, his opponent moved slightly to the right, stuck out his hand, caught Han by the upper arm, and planted him in the ground. The students all cried out at once, feeling their friend's pain as he slammed to the floor. Elizabeth put her hand over her mouth to keep herself from saying anything. The room remained silent for what seemed to be an entire minute before the others rose to their feet and applauded for their fellow student. Master Li interrupted the applause as the last attacker helped Han to his feet. He noticed that Elizabeth took great pleasure in helping up the attacker in front of her.
Young Han, why did you fail?
Master Li asked.
I was not strong enough, Master.
Han replied.
Strong enough?
Master Li repeated.
No, that is not the answer. Strength did not allow you to overcome the first 3 attackers.
Han looked to his teacher.
You used your head for the first 3 attackers, but you let your pride get in the way for the 4th.
Master Li explained.
I don't understand, Master.
Han said.
You chose to fight, instead of taking your partner to the safe zone.
Master Li replied.
And it cost both of your lives.
Han had not even thought about escaping. He had only thought to defeat all of the attackers to prove his manhood.
You have learned a great lesson today, young Han, and you are the first student to take out 3 attackers.
Master Lee had made his way next to Han as he spoke. He put his hand on Han's shoulder and continued to say,
"That's the most this class has ever seen. Well done, Han. Well done indeed."
The class erupted into applause once again. Han's frown turned into a bright smile. After a few minutes, Han and the injured attackers left the room and went to the healing center. A few hours later, they were as good as new. Chapter 31. Location, Washington, D.C. Time, 5 years after abduction.
Hi, I'm Special Agent Martinez, and this is Special Agent Set, FBI.
Rick introduced himself to the detective in charge of the scene.
Evening, gentlemen. I wish I could say that it was a good one, but in light of the circumstances.
The detective said. Lieutenant Stanford's accent was distinctly southern. He had been a part of the DC police force for about 9 years, but he had been a police officer all of his life, as he would tell his friends. Today, however, was one of the days he wished that he wasn't.
I'm Lieutenant Stanford, acting OIC of the Special Crimes Unit. Division Chief's waiting inside for you, Agent Set. I hope you can shed some light on this. Any idea why the victim would have your card in her hand?
He asked.
We'd like to take a look at the scene before we jump to any conclusions.
Agent Martinez replied.
Sure, let's go inside. We've preserved the scene per your instructions.
The detective added. Then he turned, and the three men fought their way through the crowd of reporters, television crews, and spectators. A few hours earlier, Rick and Jonathan were attending a security briefing at the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., as representatives of the Jacksonville office. While at the briefing, they received word of possible syndicate activity in the D.C. metropolitan area. On the way to the scene, they learned that the 5-year-old victim was holding Jonathan's business card, as the lieutenant had mentioned. The detective led the 2 FBI agents up a flight of stairs and then down a hallway that to Jonathan seemed to go on forever. At the other end of the hallway, several officers and a few emergency personnel stood in and around the rear stairwell, most still shaking their heads in disbelief. As the detective walked the agents down the hall, he reviewed the details of the shooting.
At approximately 3:30 this afternoon, neighbors reported hearing a child screaming. No one saw anyone enter or leave the building. We haven't been able to locate any family members as of yet. The old man who lives in the apartment at the end of the hall says that the victim's name was Susie. He doesn't know her last name. No one else in the building seems to know anything about her. We got comments such as, "Never seen her before," and "Didn't even know she existed until today," from the other tenants.
The lieutenant looked down at his notebook.
Age, approximately 5. She has brown hair and brown eyes. It's just a shame.
He continued.
Breaks your heart to see such a young life taken.
As they reached the end of the hall, they found a very young white female lying on her back, eyes closed, and there was blood in her hair as well as on the flight of stairs. The detective added that it seemed like Susie had fallen or been pushed down the stairs, finally coming to a stop near the bottom. However, they had not taken steps to determine exactly how this happened yet. When the card was found, the FBI was immediately notified, and the investigation was halted. Still, preliminary findings indicated that it was not an accident.
We can't determine a motive or anything else for that matter,
said Division Chief Madison Shepard, an African-American woman who was well respected throughout the law enforcement community. She finished the report for the detective while extending her hand to Agent Set.
Good to see you again, Agent Set. I haven't forgotten how you helped us out a few years back.
Agent Set accepted her hand.
It's good to see you again, Chief.
But he was distracted by the details of the case and decided to get to the point. His eyes couldn't let go of the image in front of him. He asked the same question that everyone here wanted answered.
She had a card in her hand that has my name on it. And you'd like to know why?
The chief nodded. Rick started to interject, but Jonathan stopped him.
Well,
Jonathan started.
It's not a coincidence that the one day I'm in Washington, D.C., a child the approximate age and likeness of my missing daughter is murdered and has a card with my name on it in her hand.
Jonathan knelt down to get a closer look at Susie.
This is the work of the syndicate. It's a reminder, a warning.
How do you know? We can't find a clue.
The chief said.
Lieutenant Stanford, can you tell me who closed her eyes?
Agent Set asked. Taking out his notebook and flipping through the pages, the detective replied,
No one. Her eyes were closed when we arrived.
No, I'm sure they were open.
Jonathan replied.
Who reported finding her?
Roger Dalton, the old man at the end of the hall.
Stanford replied.
I'm not sure I understand.
Can you bring him here, please? We have a few questions.
Rick interjected. The chief nodded to Stanford, and he left to fetch Mr. Dalton. From her previous experience with Agent Set, the chief had learned that it was best to just follow his lead.
You may not understand now, but you'll find out by the time he's finished.
She reminded herself. So she decided not to say anything as Agent Set was examining the girl. She knew that on some level, this was painful for him because of what had happened to his wife and daughter.
What do they want with me? I already told you everything I know.
Mr. Dalton wasn't happy about being pulled away from his television game show. Rick said,
Mr. Dalton, I'm Special Agent Martinez. I have a few questions for you.
Before the elderly man could open his mouth, Rick interrupted him.
I want to try to catch the person that did this, and I think you can help me.
Once again, the elderly man started to respond, and Rick cut him off.
You closed Susie's eyes, right?
Mr. Dalton lowered his head and looked at the ground.
She was such a good child, always singing that cute little song,
he said, as his voice started to tremble.
I closed her eyes because I didn't want her to see this horrible place anymore. I don't know how long she was there. I found her when I got back from the corner store. She was just lying there, her hair covered with blood.
Rick could tell that Mr. Dalton was becoming increasingly overwhelmed.
Thank you, Mr. Dalton. You can go back to your apartment now. You've been very helpful.
The elderly man turned and started walking back into his apartment. His eyes were starting to tear. Stanford nodded to one of the other officers to assist Mr. Dalton.
So, what did that tell us?
Stanford asked. He was increasingly annoyed with the way the investigation was going. He was used to running the show.
Can I see the card?
Agent Set asked. Stanford had the card brought over. He handed the evidence bag to Agent Martinez, who handed it to Agent Set. Jonathan was still looking at Susie. He admired her pretty pink striped dress and imagined her to be a happy child who loved to smile, to laugh, and to play. Jonathan stood up and asked for a black light. Within a few seconds, it was handed to him by one of the officers standing on the stairs. Agent Set shined the light on the card. An all too familiar symbol was revealed, a single letter S, which was the snake-like signature of the syndicate. The officer Jonathan handed the light back to was wearing a protective vest. He was also carrying an assault rifle. The three officers behind him, the same. Their vest had the letters SWAT emblazoned on the front. Jonathan returned the card and handed the evidence bag to Rick.
We'll authenticate it in the morning.
We're in position, and your suspect has just entered via the roof,
said a voice over the radio.
I don't know where he came from, but he's here.
Stanford wore a look of disbelief, while his chief just smiled at him and shook her head.
I tried to tell you,
she whispered.
Well, I guess we shouldn't keep our assassin waiting.
Agent Set said before touching a small button on his lapel.
Remember, everyone, if he's cornered, he will not hesitate to kill himself. The objective is to take the suspect alive.
Jonathan paused, looked at the SWAT commander, and then gave the order.
Take him.
Alpha Team, go!
The commander ordered his team. The men located on the stairwell proceeded past their commander and up the stairs, being careful not to disturb the body. Teams from other floors proceeded to their positions, hoping to trap the unsuspecting assassin, as snipers from other buildings kept their sights trained on him as well. Jonathan and Rick did not go up the stairs. Instead, they went down the stairs and across the long hallway. With stealth, they made their way to the front door, keeping away from the window. As they arrived at the foyer, they heard the muffled sound of gunfire ringing out through the stairwells. Jonathan and Rick trained their eyes on the crowd as the sound of gunshots drove spectators into a panic. Everyone ducked, dove to the ground, or ran for their lives. All but one, that is.
That's our man,
Rick said.
Bravo team, lock on your target.
Jonathan said, speaking into his concealed radio.
Roger that, leader.
A voice replied.
Delta team, block it off.
Jonathan ordered.
Delta team moving into position.
Came the reply.
Time to go,
Rick said. Jonathan nodded and opened the door. From the crowd, a voice yelled,
Look, someone's coming out.
A Special Crimes Unit officer concealed in the crowd shouted this. Her assignment was to give the signal to the fake reporters and camera crews, letting them know when to aim their lights into the crowd. This lit up the crowd in the general vicinity of the only person who didn't panic when gunfire erupted inside the building. Additional lights flooded the area, turning evening into daylight. As Jonathan and Rick stepped out of the building, several SCU and other undercover officers appeared out of the crowd, drawing their weapons on the unsuspecting individual. Instead of issuing the normal warnings, they instantly disabled the individual and attempted to restrain him, fearing that he would immediately take his own life. Jonathan's radio came alive.
Check his teeth. Agent Set, this one swallowed something. He had a false tooth. Don't let the...
Jonathan cut the feed and ran toward the crowd, pushing his way to the perpetrator.
Make a hole. Get out of the way.
He fought his way forward. As several officers of the SCU held the man down, Jonathan knelt down, screaming at the others to stand clear. He reached into the man's mouth long enough to place the butt of his gun between the man's teeth and hold his mouth open. The man was attempting to remove a tooth with his tongue. Jonathan grabbed the fake tooth and pulled it out of the man's mouth. The other officers were amazed. Jonathan stood up, holstered his weapon, and looked up at the front door of the building. There stood the chief and the lieutenant. Jonathan and the chief nodded at each other.
Alpha team, report.
Jonathan said into his radio.
We're good, Agent Set, but the suspect is down. Suicide.
The team leader responded.
Understood.
Agent Set replied. He had wanted to take everyone alive, but he knew that it could end this way. In his many encounters with the syndicate, they had rarely captured an operative alive. At least he had one this time, and maybe this one would lead him to his daughter. Rick made his way to where Jonathan was standing.
Got him,
he said.
Good plan, Rick.
Jonathan said. Rick had come up with the entire plan and put it into play.
It worked,
Jonathan thought. They had successfully captured a syndicate operative. No one was hurt or injured other than one of the assassins, and sadly, a little girl named Susie. Lieutenant Stanford told his men,
Let's get this piece of trash to somewhere isolated and arrange for 24/7 observation until the FBI arranges for pickup.
The 4 officers holding the man down yanked him to his feet. His arms and legs were bound, and he was gagged as an extra precaution. As the officers turned the prisoner and started toward an armored vehicle, Jonathan felt the air telling him that something was coming, but he was too far away to stop the bullet that was pushing through the air. A millisecond later, it hit the restrained man between the shoulder blades. The force of the shot ripped the man's body from the SCU officer's grip and sent him face first to the ground. No one heard the shot, and the few who understood what was happening either ran for cover or started looking from the origin of the shot. The radio chatter was confusing as snipers frantically looked around. No other shots were fired, and no shooter was identified. Susie's death was catalogued as a murder for hire and was closed by the SCU. The case was later reopened by the FBI as a syndicate-related crime.